this one, man. You get out there, chin strap undone, flying around for warm-up. This song was everywhere in the early 2000s.
I remember it.
God. This would have been in the NHL. You guys would have played this in the NHL for sure.
Big time. Yeah, I remember this song.
This song was a mandatory track in every single hockey rink around the world. It's a good tune. I'll give him that. That's a big Vegas pool party song, too. I'll bet you there was some debauchery in Vegas while that song was playing, because I think it goes on for like 13 minutes. It's like Stairway.
Oh, that song never ends, man.
It just keeps going. Ends. It just keeps going. There's no, I don't think, is there any sound, is there lyrics? I don't think so. I think it's just pure like beats. But anyway, Struddy coming up. Jason Strudwick will join us this hour. Gerry's percentages in about a half an hour. The Leafs are back in action. The Raptors return tomorrow night, post-trade deadline. And, you know, we got another Instagram story. We'll get to this a little bit later on with Justin Fields unfollowing the Bears, and such a modern move in pro sports. The I'm going to unfollow or I'm going to take you off my profile.
But the sadder thing about it is when the athlete does that, there's usually smoke there where it's like, I'm not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beginning of the end, the unfollowing of the Bears. And maybe he caught wind that they're going to go in a different direction and draft that kid from UCLA. I have no idea. I don't know what the hell they're going to do.
Yeah, the Caleb Williams are taken, I think.
That would be the first step of him saying, screw you, I'm unfollowing, so I'm going to cause a buzz there. Mm-hmm. And that just means he's done with it. He's totally done with them.
Yeah, it seems that way. You know, we'll get into it a little bit later on, but he's not the first athlete to do this. He won't be the last. And this is the play in 2024. You unfollow people on Instagram.
Yes.
That is the most passive-aggressive, I'm out of here, or you want me out, and I don't care. I'm breaking up with you before you break up with me via Instagram follow. Yet it generally is an indication of what's happening. As ridiculous as it might sound, it generally is. And I'm curious what would be considered what would create the most buzz in the NHL if a player unfollowed their team?
Which player? Or
which
right now?
I think if Sid did the old drop.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It was Sid down in Pitt.
Did you hear Dubas's comments today?
Yes. He's got no answers. What's he going to do down there?
But he said, we do have to get younger. He said that. Like you're right. What is he going to do? But he's saying, I'm trying to give my team a little bit more bandwidth here, but we do have to get younger.
No. They don't need any more bandwidth, whatever that means. That dream is over there, man. They're not good enough.
No,
they're just not good enough.
They're not.
And if you want to keep telling the or your fan base, but the only question is left is you want to play it out with those guys that are still there with Geno Malkin. I think Letang's still a good defenseman, but it's like, what are you going to do? The only way you get better is move on from it. And the only question mark is, what does Sid want to do?
He wants to stay. He said he's not going anywhere. He's a free agent after next year. You know, it seems as if he's committed to it. I personally think that'll be a sad finish to an unbelievable career. Because if this is where they are now, like you look at their cap structure, they have Brian Rust for 5 more years, Ricard Raquel for 5 more years. Like those guys are already in their 30s, and I believe they have like no movements and no trades. Letang's got years left. Carlson's got years left. Obviously, Malkin, Riley Smith's got 2 years. Mike Sullivan, the head coach, his massive contract doesn't even kick in until like next year or something. It's like Dubas. I don't know. What did he think he was walking into?
That's what he signed up for,
exactly.
Man. He took the money, and it's a 7-year deal at roughly $6 million a year. He put $40 million in his jeans and said, that's why I want 7 years, because I'm going to try it with this group. And he traded for Carlson. Mm-hmm. He got Riley Smith. He tried to make this team better, and right now they're not. But what is he going to do? To me, he was going to try for the next couple of years and then have a 5-year rebuild, because that's why they gave him 7 years. There has to be a plan.
He probably looked back on it and said, I should have had more of an honest assessment of what's really here, because bringing in Carlson was not the right thing to do. That's retrospective analysis. When I saw the deal, I'm like, maybe that guy's going to log 30 minutes and give Letang a break, and he's going to have the puck the whole night, and he's going to be spring sit on breakaways and Geno Malkin. It just hasn't worked out like that. I'm just looking at what happened. I'm looking at it right now. It wasn't the right thing to do, but I'm saying that right now.
No, exactly. And I'm pretty sure the money matched up money in, money out, and all that. So
Right.
the way it worked out, it wasn't as if it was like you were going from nothing to adding $10 million or whatever the cap hit is. But yes, it has not worked out, and it's not going to get better. Like that's the issue is when you're locked in to guys like, all these guys are older players. Sid's having a magical season, unbelievable season, but at some point it's going to tail off a little bit, and he needs help. He's going to need to be propped up.
You know what you need? You need a big, tall, lanky, physical. Hair is an issue. If you can get a balding defenseman that's gritty and tough and Spangler Cup experience.
Spangler Cup experience is very valuable.
If you can go out and get a young guy with a skullet that has Spangler Cup experience, that will turn it around.
I tend to agree with you on that. We happen to have someone on the line right now that fits that description almost to a T. Here's our main man, Jason Strudwick, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Has Kyle Dubas sent you a "you up" text recently, Struddy, or what?
He did, but I said to him, I'm busy knitting. I'm a knitter now, so I'm unable to help the troops out.
Yeah. Well, it's tough, man. How can you? I can't come up with an answer on how it's going to work with Sid still there. Like Sid's got, I think, a couple of years left of still being a great player, impact player. They're 8 points out of the playoffs right now. Their cap is not well structured. They don't have young players coming up. They, picks, prospects, all that kind of stuff is a struggle. How do they possibly make it work in Pittsburgh and try to make Sidney Crosby happy? Is it even possible for them to do that in the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, you look at how similar their stories are, Ovechkin and Crosby, right? They're two teams they've had a great run with these two, Hall of Fame careers of their guys, and, along with Malkin, some other guys, Carlson around there. But now, sooner or later, you keep sending guys out and keep kind of go for it. There's a price to be paid. And then your high end players, they get older, and you don't have the younger guys coming around to help them out. If you're Pittsburgh, can you keep Gensel? And if you're Gensel, I understand you love Sid, but do you want to sign there for 8 years, knowing that probably half of that won't have Sidney Crosby or any of the other guys? And so now you're kind of surfing along the bottom of the league. So it's going to be a real challenge. But this seems to be the cycle. We've seen this already with Chicago. I think the one team we could agree that hasn't had the same type of issue yet, and may not because of the way they've kind of gone about it, is LA Kings. You got Doughty and Kopitar. Now Quick was moved out. People didn't love that, but he was changed. Now you've got some younger players in LA that will be able to maybe be transferred the mantle of leading that group when Kopitar and Doughty have done their careers.
Where I was going to go, Struddy, too, because if you look at it on the cycle, how about the Dallas Stars, where Jamie Benn, who's won a Hart, and Tyler Seguin's a top-tier player. Those guys have been on the third line, like farther down. Seguin's cropped up in the top 6, but when you look at it, you need young players to push through so that your veteran players, if they're going to play supporting roles and are still good players, that's where Pittsburgh just doesn't have it. They don't have young guys pushing through where it's like, okay, if Gino doesn't have it one night, we can move him down to the third line because we have depth, that we've got guys that are pushing these older guys out. That's happened in Dallas, but LA, you mentioned, has done that because young guys have pushed through. The Trevor Moores have done a good job. Kempe, guys like that. Now the Byfield kid has come in and looks really good. But, they've had that retool on the fly. Some of these other organizations, Pittsburgh, Washington, you mentioned, they've had success, but they're on the tail end of it now. They're paying the price for some of the things that they've gone all in for.
They have, and, the thing that Pittsburgh and Washington, you continue trading picks to try to go for it every year. And I get the idea that, you have to go all in when you have these stars, but I don't agree with it. There's some years you're not good enough, right? Like you're just not there. So maybe win a round or two, but I don't always agree that you have to go all in. And actually, Hayes, I saw you on Sportsnet one night. You look really nice, or TSN, you looked really good the one night. Most nights you look good, but you made the point that you don't think the Leafs should go all in. And I'd actually agree. Like, if they add a D or add a win, are they suddenly going to beat the two teams above them and then move over to the other conference and beat them as well? And I know fans don't want to hear this, and this isn't an anti-Leafs rant, but I think sometimes organizations have to say, maybe we don't have it. And if we do go for it, everyone says, well, anything can happen in the playoffs. I get it, but how often does that happen? So, closer to home here at the Oilers, I think the Oilers, my advice to them, trade your second, your third, fourth rounders, but try to keep your first rounders this year. Try to add a player that you think can help you in the next coming years. That's obviously you're hoping that Connor Leon are willing and able to resign here. But I just don't know that every year is a year we're going for it. We've got a chance. This guy's going to score 75 goals. Yeah, and it's a great story, but there's a lot of other team when he's not on the ice that still has to get it done.
Yeah. There's a price to pay when you do. We see it. There's a price when you behave like that. It's like there's nothing in the cupboards. Nothing.
Right, and the nature of, like you mentioned in Struddy, like everyone says, anything can happen in the playoffs. Well, that includes the team you currently have. Right? Like, obviously that can also include, like, maybe you don't need Tanev, you don't need Hannah. It'd be great to have those guys. Like, no one's suggesting you wouldn't want players like that. It's that you have to pay a price. But I think in reality, the same thing in Edmonton, the same thing in Toronto. Like, if the Leafs are going to go deep, if the Oilers are going to go deep, it's not some guy that's playing for Nashville that's going to trigger that. Like, it's not Sean Walker is not showing up in Edmonton and now all of a sudden they win a cup. It's McDavid's going to do it, and Matthews is going to do it, and Draisaitl, and Marner, and Riley, and Nurse. Like, those are the guys. Skinner, Sam, whoever's in net, whoever is in place right now, including whoever's behind the bench. That's what's going to get the job done. Like, that's the reality. The trade deadline, you can help yourself out, but if you don't have enough already there on March 8th at 2:59 p.m., you're not all of a sudden a cup favorite at 3 o'clock because you made a couple of trades. Like, that's just never been a reality in the NHL.
No, and your point's well made. And then the thing about it is that, someone made the point that the Leafs look like a team that's won a Stanley Cup based on their prospects, but they haven't. And then the Oilers in some ways as well. You've got to find a way. Those teams that I talked about, Pittsburgh and Caps, they have Stanley Cups. The Oilers and Leafs don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and tonight you got Boston out there in Edmonton. Like, is this a bigger game than usual? I mean, I'm always curious about that, Struddy. Like, the Bruins they've been so steady for so long, regular season juggernauts the last couple of years, this year included. Obviously, Edmonton's played themselves back into a situation where they feel pretty comfortable with their playoff hopes, but they're trying to pass Vegas, I'm sure, for home ice. Maybe Vancouver opens the door and they can creep all the way up top. Like, is this a litmus test? How are people defining the Bruins in town tonight?
Well, the Bruins are more well-liked than the Leafs, right? And I think that's which is kind of crazy to think that. But it's true. It's hard to hate the Bruins. And in the Leafs, for whatever reason, I see blue and you're like, oh man, I would have knit a scarf with that color. But, when you look at it, the Oilers, I believe both the Bruins and the Oilers have both played Dallas in the recent games. I think the Bruins were last game, the Oilers were 2 games ago. And I watched both games and, similar. Dallas is a good team. So, I don't know if the Oilers are at the point anymore where it's like, okay, this is like a show-me game, right? We have to show what we can do, or we have got to prove that we can play at the big boys. I think they can. They beat Dallas, but the thing that I think it is for the players in that room, to be able to play the game you want to play against good teams that have been good for a long time, so that it's 2-2 after 2 periods, and you're willing to just get I can just be calm and win this 3-2. I don't panic and feel like I have to win it 5-2. So I think that's the big thing for the Oilers is that you want to just be able to play your game for 60 minutes. And, they played Arizona the other day, and I think the Leafs play Arizona tonight. And that team, man, that's a team that's permanent rebuilt. If you squint, you can maybe see a line there with, is it Kerfoot and Cooley and Gunther?
Krause.
But Krause another. But you got to squint pretty hard, right? It's like, and their D is pretty young or not quite in that top 2 or 3 defensemen. So it's a tough situation they're in. But I think for the Oilers, they want to go out and just prove themselves that their game works against top teams.
Struddy, you're talking about knitting a lot. Like, do you worry about your physique just sitting around knitting all winter? Like, spring is around the corner and you have to get ready for your tight jeans and your spandex for your bicycle. What do you do to get informed to put those type of items on your frame?
Well, a couple things. I think I told you guys I've been doing tennis, so that's kind of got the agility. And then I've been swimming. Every Thursday morning I swim. And last Thursday I went swimming, and I got out of the pool after, and I'm just sitting in the hot tub, and the lifeguard walks over. She's like, "You know, we offer adult classes for swimming."
She must have been watching him the whole time, almost drowning or something. What was going on?
She was following me, walking me up and down the pool deck. I'm like, why is she watching me so closely? And so that was humbling. I thought, in my mind, I'm looking really smooth. I've got the nice stroke, but when you hear that after an hour swim, it's pretty humbling, dog.
Yeah, that's when they're looking at you like maybe you need some floaties on those arms. That's
the worst.
That's a little
part
bit
is
concerning.
Struddy probably thought that someone was checking him out, and then it's like, no, you need swimming lessons.
Yeah, they've got the fishing pole there just in case for you to grab onto in case you go under.
Yeah, that's concerning. That is tough when you think you're sending a vibe out, and actually it's life or death in the mind of the person that's watching you. But
I feel like the next step is an old folks home for you. You're knitting, you're playing tennis, you're swimming. Like
Struddy, we got to ask you. We were talking about like CHL, like music in the barns. Do you have a song back in the day from the Western Hockey League that was like the ultimate warm-up song that was Struddy loved wheeling out there for the warm-ups with his bucket on and his mullet sticking out?
Well, when I was in the Western League, and Noodles, you were probably the same, we weren't allowed to warm up at the same time. So we had separate warm-ups. Like, that's how tough the league was. It was crazy. So, like the home team or the away team would warm up like 45 minutes before. Then we warm up 30 minutes before the game, the home team. I mean, that's a league right there where you have to keep the animals apart. I mean, that was crazy. So, but the music, I mean, it was Motley Crue was always, like Dr. Feelgood or Kickstart Your Heart. If that didn't get you high stepping around the, full ice warm up, oh my God, just flying.
Yeah. Kickstart Your Heart's a great song.
Struddy, what was the song that Kamloops came out to, the most annoying song that you guys used to strut around to? What was the name of it?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't. It's a bit embarrassing. Like we were winning so much, we actually wore out the cassette of "Taking Care of Business." That's the song we listened to, and after a while, like, how many times can we score and pound a team and then win the games? Like, it was too bad. I mean, luckily now they play other songs, right? They have like CDs, or probably not CDs. They got it online, but. Back then, guys, it wasn't fun. I mean, this was not. Dog, you would have loved coming into Kamloops. My God, just dish up a few minuses.
Yeah. Huh?
Please, buddy. Please, man. If you think that, I'm not even getting into this garbage with your Kamloops
Taking
Blazers.
Care of business in Kamloops. With Jason Strudwick. Yeah, it was interesting last night. Noodles, you were down there. The Kachucks going at it again last night, and it's so disappointing what's happened with Ottawa because in my opinion, the biggest disappointment in the league, and it's not even close. It's just been a disaster of a year, and yet they've got a team there with guys that they could be such a hateable team, which is a good thing. But you got to win. Like the ultimate way of being a team that everyone's going to hate is you got to win. And you got Kachuk, who's going to maybe score 40, and he's going to have how many fights? 15 fights, 20 fights. Ridley Gregg is obviously establishing himself as a guy that no one likes to play against. And yet you can't win. You can't. It's great that you go down to Florida and you get in fights, you lose again. And there were all those fights up in Ottawa. I'm pretty sure Florida won that game big, I believe. I mean, that's... Noodles, you could probably speak on that. It's like they have the makings of some characters there, but if you lose, it's irrelevant.
What about getting more guys other than your captain, your 40-goal scorer that's wanting to fight everybody? That's what they need. Someone else. I think what it
is, and I'm looking at this team too. It's almost. I said this to you guys before. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for this season. On paper, it looked really good. Shane Pinto gets the 41-game suspension. They get injuries, they inconsistency, all this. The team, they win 4 in a row. Then they lose against Anaheim and Chicago. Then they go into Tampa and play a complete game. Last night, they're down 2-0 going into the third. They storm back and get it into overtime. Like, this team, I wish, had a better start to the season where it's like, okay, you're not 15, 20 points out. I haven't checked the playoffs where it's like it's playing meaningful hockey because they are tough to play against when they're engaged, but they've been too inconsistent all season long. And Struddy, we were just talking about, I want to spin this into Pittsburgh because I want Struddy's opinion. What do you do in Pittsburgh with Sid and Gino and Letang and Carlson? Like, that's a tough situation where, Sid says he wants to stay. They're 9 points out of a playoff spot.
Yeah, so I'm on record saying trading for Carlson made no sense to me. Carlson and Burns wasn't exactly a recipe of success in San Jose. So why did we expect Letang and Carlson to be that much more successful in where you're looking at in Pittsburgh? Now, it worked with Niemeyer and Pronger, but I think those two guys were maybe a little bit different type of players and maybe a different approach to their games individually. So, I think that with that group, you have to try to find a way to quickly retool on the fly. Problem is you don't have a lot of assets, right? Then you can say, well, we can start winning towards the end of the year. And I never understood when people said, well, we won at the end of the year. It helps. The only team I know of on record is when Rick Tocchet took over Vancouver and they started doing well, and they kind of, have carried it into this season with some success, obviously a lot of success this year. But, winning at the end of the season, I remember being on bad teams, and when you're out of the playoffs, you're not going to make the playoffs, you just loosen up. We get scored on, who cares? We've lost already a bunch of games, but you kind of stay in the game. If Lakeem lets you stick around, then all of a sudden you maybe find a way to win the game. So you're a lot looser than when it matters. When it matters, it's hard to play in the league because every play you make is dissected. Everything counts.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. I mean, in Pittsburgh, it's like there's no learning. Like Sid doesn't care about learning. Great, we played well in April against a good team. That's meaningless. And that's also what makes it feel so different. Like Washington's in a similar spot, but they've got Ovi chasing something. Like Ovi, when he passes Gretzky, that's going to be a triumphant moment. It's all going to be worth it. But Pittsburgh's a very different story. So we'll see. All right, Struddy, a couple of big games tonight. Matthews going for 50. I'm sure you're excited. I'm sure Edmonton's buzzing about that. Like, speak for the market and be honest with us. Because in Toronto, people are like, why is this guy not leading the charge for the Hart? Is he getting Hart chatter out there? Like, if this guy scores 70, how will people in Edmonton feel about that?
Well, I think that elite players should be in the conversation for the Hart every year, no matter how well they're playing or how bad they're playing. I want to be on. I think Drake should get the Hart 1 year. But
okay, we can look into that.
But but what he's doing is incredible. His assault on scoring, and I watch Sleece because I love seeing the way that he scores, and he's getting all over the ice, finds that open ice. Driving the net, something like he's just doing it so many different ways. So I hope he gets to 70. I these numbers I think of 70 goals for a player or 100 assists for a player. Like I didn't think we'd see this again a few years ago, and yet here we are. With players that might accomplish that. Like it is really truly impressive to see guys doing that. And you got to just tip the cap and say, what? Doesn't matter what jersey you're wearing. It is impressive. Yeah,
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. All right, Struddy, we'll leave it there, buddy. We'll do it again soon. Thank you for this.
See you, boys.
There he is, Jason Strudwick from the Got Yer Back podcast, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, we should get Drake in the running for the Hart 1 year. That would go over well in Edmonton and Vancouver.
I don't ever see him at Leaf games.
He's, my understanding...
Wasn't he the kiss of death there the one time in the playoffs? People were blaming him for the loss against Boston or something like that.
Possibly.
In the stands.
But there. I don't think he's sitting in the seats when he's at Leaf games.
No.
So I'm pretty sure he goes down, but he's up in the suite. Like... The Raptors are different because he's courtside. The security's right there. They get him in and out of the back.
Yeah, it would be a petting zoo if he was in this crowd.
He can't be. He's not sitting in the Platinums. Like that's not going to happen.
No.
It's the same thing with Bieber. When Bieber's in town, he's up in the suite. But yeah, I think all like that. That's kind of stuff that you talk about game ops and you talk about people that like work down at MLSE. I've heard stories of that, like guys like Drake and A+ list. People calling at like 3:30 saying I'm coming down. And it's okay, how are we going to make this work? And And when the guy says he's coming down, and you got to make it work.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to accommodate Drake. If he's coming down, it's like you got to find him a suite. Someone's got to move. It can be a gong show.
And he's coming with 14 people,
Right,
too.
right. And then there's a chance at 6:50 he texts saying, actually, I'm not. Thanks anyway. It's like, okay, great. How are we going to operate now? How do we go back to the guy we just moved and tell him he can have his suite back? This is the kind of stuff that can happen. But anyway, Leafs Arizona tonight. Edmonton Bruins tonight. Vancouver's lost 3 in a row. And there's some panic setting in there. There shouldn't be. There shouldn't be.
No.
There shouldn't be. It's only 3 in a row. Every team in the league loses 3 in a row. But there's underlying anxiety in that market because this was so unforeseen, right? Like, no one saw this coming.
I think they're just saying, we've dealt with enough garbage. Next week, this better be over with, and we're going to be trucking on. We're too good of a team. The game in Minnesota is that would get your attention. That would get your attention. Where it's like a 10 spot in that league is like
right. And they got the lead last night. Now Colorado at home doesn't lose. Yeah,
and it's back to back, and it's like you play good against Colorado, and then you just have to you got to lick your wounds and regroup after that, and say, that's not us, and we got to flip the switch now. That's what good teams do. A lot of good teams go home, and they got to just regroup and say, that was nonsense, and let's snap out of it.
Well, they might have a savior in the wings. It's practicing in Abbotsford.
Phil Kessel, you mean? Yeah, it's been quiet with Phil. I haven't
heard,
I haven't heard anything on Phil and how things are working out.
Well, you never know. This guy might show up all of a sudden. Get a jersey. Who knows?
That's a good point.
But I would love to see Phil get an opportunity. But if you're trying to build towards something for the Canucks and you like your team, he didn't play in the playoffs. So what are you bringing him there for? You've got the team to get you in the playoffs and have a high seeding. So what is the reasoning?
Yeah, it's depth. Exactly. You're not bringing Phil in thinking that's going to be the piece that puts you over the top, or it's not going to have any effect on the psyche of the fan base, the team. It's simply depth. It's a good story. You get him in there again. By all accounts, great teammate, great guy, and but yeah, he's not playing in the playoffs. Like, unless you're 2, 3, 4 injuries deep, or you're 2, 3 games in and you can't score for whatever reason. He's not, like, game 1 with a healthy lineup. Phil Kessel's not playing. Like, that's I think well understood. All right, Gerry's percentages coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
You're going to want to hear this.
Gerry's percentages.
I don't love being commissioner as much as I used to. I actually love it even more.
That's the voice of a Hall of Famer.
Are you kidding? Have you been out drinking?
You're all pigeons. Filthy, filthy pigeons.
It's Gerry. Gerry.
All right, Gerry's percentages brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice cold beers, always dialed in for game time. Hustle into your local BP tonight. Gerry's percentages. Gerry, I'm sure, is in a good mood. You guys ready to hear from Gerry?
Let's go.
Gerry's certain you were all impressed with my 11-page soliloquy on why Morgan Riley remains a naughty little rascal. And if you like that action, wait till you hear today's takes because they're pure poetry.
All right. Okay. That was an 11-page soliloquy by Gerry on why he's upholding the 5-game suspension. Which
there was actually 11 pages on that.
That's my understanding. Seems totally unnecessary, doesn't it? Just thumbs up or thumbs down, Gerry, and leave it at that.
That's lawyer speak. That's all it is. And did anybody think that he was going to change his mind? Like, I was thinking maybe he'd give a game back and Morgan would get maybe some money back. Mm-hmm. But I 5 games, that's what he got, and Gerry wasn't going to change that.
Yeah, he probably wasn't. All right, let's get to these poetic takes from Gerry.
Gerry, here's all you losers in Toronto focused on 70 goals for Auston Matthews. But I've got even higher hopes because I think the great American goal-scoring machine will score at least 75 this season.
Ooh. 75 for the great American goal-scoring machine. Here.
The one thing that would get my attention to say like a low percentage, like 5% on this, is like his shooting percentage. Did you guys say it was 24%?
21 and a half.
Yeah, even great shooters, I think, start hovering around 12, 13%. Yeah. So there might be a dip there. And I understand what he's doing. It's insane. But to say 75, Gerry is just getting greedy now. Like it was 60, 65, 70. 70 wrapped up the Hart for him, and now Gerry wants 75? Mm-hmm. I'm 10%. And I feel like that's a downer type of comment.
75 is an absurd number.
It is.
Absurd.
I'm just going to say, let's not get greedy here. And take your 70 and be quiet.
That's 26 goals in 28 games. You and I both know he's more than capable of doing that. Doesn't mean he will, but that's basically the pace he's been on all year. So, all right, 10%. Noodles?
Yeah, I don't know. You're right. Like I don't know. It's just such a big number.
It's a ridiculous number. Ridiculous.
I'll go a bit higher. I don't know if I should go higher or lower. I'm in that range. Give me 12%. Right. But I don't know. I feel like he's been on such a heater, but before that he was on, a bit of a downtrend. Like it all averages out. This is the heater part. So if there's a downtrend coming, that number will come down. So right. I'm 12%.
12%. Okay, I'll be a little bit higher, but you definitely have to be at a smaller. 75 is crazy. Yet again, when you put that into perspective, with every game it shortens, right? And the idea of him scoring 26 and 28 is not crazy. I mean, I could see him ripping 4 home tonight. Like, I could see him doing that. This Arizona team's a mess. Defensively, they're not good. Their goaltender's hurt. Would it be shocking if he had, 2 tonight, 2 tomorrow in Vegas? No. And then all of a sudden you're like, you start crunching the numbers. Like, that's how hot he's been. I'll say 25%. I'm going to give him a 1 in 4 chance. And I think because of where they are in the standings, he's got to keep playing. Like, I don't see load management. Game 81, game 82. He's got to play, right? They're going to be fighting for positioning, I think, all the way down the wire. He's going to play, and if anything, he might get more minutes down the stretch. Mm-hmm. So I'll say 25%.
At least one of the major sports leagues will completely abolish the All-Star game within the next decade. Even Gerry's sick of watching that garbage. Adam Silver must be as embarrassed as I am.
I don't know. Completely abolished, like the Pro Bowl, the All-Star game.
I think 80%. They're just they can't do it. You can't do it. Like, they don't want to go there, and when they do get there, it's an embarrassment, and it's just bad for business. I don't know how it became bad for business, but it's officially bad for business. And I said last week, it sickens me to think the only way to correct it is one way. If you chuck a bag of money at someone to try. Like, can you believe McDavid got $1 million for what he did?
I know, for winning a skills competition,
dude,
$1 million.
He skated around the rink 100 miles an hour, and the guy's the most skilled player in the world. Sure, go ahead and give him $1 million, but
he didn't break a sweat. He did not break a sweat.
Yeah,
$1 million. Like, it was
$1 million to go
crazy.
Out there for that. Yeah. That's embarrassing.
But aren't they trying to bring in, what is that, 4-team whatever, or 4 nations cup or whatever?
Yeah.
Isn't that going to be in place of the All-Star game?
I mean, they just announced over the weekend they're going to Long Island in 2026, I believe. The Olympics and the All-Star game are both going to happen. So they're making announcements on All-Star games in the future. Yes, there's going to be some years where it gets knocked out for that, like next year, but that doesn't mean it's completely abolished.
I'm low on this because I think the league feels that there's still moneymakers. Mm-hmm. This is still good for the fans, especially for that local market. So I'm going to be
Noodles, there's no doubt about that. I saw it. Like, the fans were everywhere. Fans were like, it was a fan fest.
That's why
incredible. It's awesome.
That's why it's 0%. I think it's 0%. It's a moneymaker. It's a schmooze fest. It's a way to get big corporations together, and it's big in the local market. For people watching at home, it's meaningless. And it's always been that way. The revisionist history, I find almost nauseating. This idea that it used to be some great game. No, it wasn't. Like, how hungover the players were in 1987? Like, do you think they were really sure, a shift here or there, or, a dash up and down the court, maybe a little bit of defense with 3 or 4 minutes to go, but they weren't trying. And it's not.
I'm telling you, Gretzky versus Lemieux was something.
Because of who they were, dude, and you were a kid. That's why, and I guarantee if you asked a kid, hey, Matthews versus McDavid was something, they'd say the same thing when they're 12. But, like I'm the same way. I used to love that too. When I was 10, I was like, hey, this is really cool. But it's not, it doesn't mean the guy, your dad was watching saying it was cool. He was probably like, what are they doing out there?
Now that we know what we know, you're right. As a kid, you're like, that was awesome.
Yeah.
As parents, you're like, that guy just sweat out a dozen beer skating up the ice.
I know what that guy was up to last night. Like, look at that guy. He's literally hunched over like Phil after a bag skate. You know? But it's a moneymaker. It's an event, and teams want it. Owners want it. Markets want it. I'm at 0%.
Two things are going to happen the rest of the way this season. Sidney Crosby will score 50 goals, and Alex Ovechkin, the gray-haired legend, will score at least 30.
Ooh. That's an interesting one, because Sid, I believe, is sitting on 31 goals.
Both of those are going to happen?
Both of them are going to happen.
0%.
0%. Wow,
dude,
that's
one of them might get to that accomplishment. For Sid to keep trucking and get 50 this season, he is Sid, but that's a stretch.
He's only done it once in his career, man.
No kidding. And they're not going to be very good, and they might sell off at the deadline. Like, who knows what the hell they're going to be bringing to the table after the deadline.
Well, which one do you think is more likely? Sid's at 31 goals, so he needs 19 more the rest of the way. Ovi's at 16, so he needs 14 more the rest of the way. Who do you think has a better chance of either
right
reaching
now?
50
I'm
going
to go Ovi, as goofy as that sounds.
Well, I got to give flowers to O, and I'm sure, Hayes, you have. Because, you called it. We signed off on that, what was that, 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago? Hayes and I were like, this guy, you would sign off on 20. And, you were like, I'm bullish on this guy. He's going to get hot, and you never know. And all this guy's doing is, 6 goals in 6 games?
I think he's got 8 in his last 8. Yeah, he had 6 in 6 straight, took a day off, and had 2 last night. He snuck one in on the power play with like 30 seconds to go.
8 since my comment.
Yes, 8 and 8 since your comment. I mean, that was we talked about it. I was like, take the 20 and move on and train in the offseason. That's what I said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a Hazy B edition of take it or leave it.
That was maybe an arbitration, a little arbitration. I think you're right. Yeah, but you walk away from that ARB case all day.
O was right. I mean, this guy is, it could be Ovi, just the way that he's, at least woken up. Maybe the All-Star break reinvigorated him. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But something looks different there with him. He's at least playing with a lot more confidence. And 8 goals in 8 games, regardless who you are, that's pretty impressive.
Absolutely, and that's it. Like I think, it keeps going back and forth, but it's likely 30 seems reasonable now. And yet Sid's on pace for like 49. He's on pace. If he just keeps playing the way he's consistently played, he'll be touching up on 50. I'd love to see it. I think it would suck if they were eliminated from the playoffs and he scores 50. Yeah. I think it would actually really illuminate the issue. It would really kind of hammer it home. Like, look at you, man. You're still one of the best players in the world. You're unbelievable. And this team cannot pull its weight for you. It's not like Pittsburgh has cheated him at all. He's won 3 cups. He's been to 4 cup finals. He loves it there. They love him. It's not as if they've been terrible his whole career, but they're not going to make the playoffs. And the likelihood of them somehow miraculously making it next year seems almost impossible.
That's what sucks about it, because that's the way Sid's going down, is not making the playoffs. Who the hell wants to see that?
Yeah, no, exactly. But the likelihood of both happening, I'll be low on this too, 15%. 15%.
Your boy Slafkovsky is rounding into form, and Habs fans won't shut up about it. And even though Gerry still leans bust on this one, I'll throw the kid a bone and say in the next 3 years he'll become a bona fide star. My sources tell me he's built like a Greek god. And so is Gerry.
Oh, all right. There you go. Same body type. Slafkovsky and Gerry.
He is a horse.
He's a big dude.
Oh, my God. I walked by him in the hallway like he was stretching out. He is like a big, thick kid, like big and thick, like advanced. He didn't look. Is he 9? He's 19.
He's 19 still, yeah.
He looked like he was 28. He looked like Eric Lindros. Like, remember how Lindros was just a man child?
God,
that's what he looked
scary.
like. Like that's what this guy's legs and ass were. He's just a huge man. Which maybe it's taken him a little bit longer to catch up to his body, but Bonafide star?
Bonafide star in the
Define
next 3
star
years.
in this league.
Like
I'm going to give the
you know.
kid 78%. Because I like what he's doing on the ice right now. He's taking shots on the power play. They're saying that you're going to play in the power play now with those two other guys, Suzuki and Caulfield. And he's turning a corner, and it's a nice thing to see. Because there was a time there where you're like, what the hell is this guy going to turn out to be? I'm loving him right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bump it up to 80%.
Wow.
80%, he's a bona fide stud.
Okay. Yeah, it's arbitrary, Noodles. I mean, 35 goals scored, 30, 35, maybe
it's
a point,
just a stud.
Point a game.
We all
Just
know
a
what
guy
a stud is out there.
That guy's a stud.
61%, just over 50, but I still need to see more. That line looked really good. They look good. I don't know if they'll be together forever, but that's, Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slafkovsky have some chemistry right now. Maybe that line continues to grow and they add more depth below it, but they have looked really good in the games that I've watched.
Yeah, no, to their credit. And he's starting to put up some numbers he is. He's starting to, and you would hope so. Montreal Habs fans are really sensitive with this topic. And it's because they haven't had anything to hang on to the last couple of years.
They're sensitive because they don't want it to be a bust.
Of course not.
We're terrible. We get the first overall pick. And we go against the grain, and they did the right thing by not taking Wright, and they took Slafkovsky. They want it to work out, man.
Yeah. No, it's
screw up that pick, it's a big time hurt to the organization.
Absolutely, it really is. It's not the worst case scenario, but it's definitely. You feel almost cursed when you get that top pick, and it's a draft where there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah,
right?
There's no McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon. You got to take a gamble.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing with this guy. And I credit St. Louis and the whole organization because they're saying we're playing this guy. Like we know we're not that good. I remember I took a ton of heat in September. I'm like they're going to be one of the worst 6 or 7 teams in the league, and Habs fans freaked out. And that's exactly where they are, and that's where they're going to be. They're going to finish.
Gave you crap for that.
I think a number of teams gave me. I think a lot of people.
What
were
I said
at
is
me.
there are teams that can play and be bottom feeders, but still play meaningful hockey. I think the Habs have had a good season for where they are.
Relatively speaking, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yet they have 52 points. I mean, we got to have perspective here. They're one of the worst teams in the league. That's just a fact.
Right. But they'll end up with 75 points this year.
Yeah.
You try to be nice. I just got to tell you guys, you try to be nice. And my buddy's a Habs fan. He's like, this guy's not bona fide. Stop saying that. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's like if you don't think he is, and I don't want to think. I think he's going to be a good player.
There's nothing wrong with being a good player in this league. We'll see what happens with it because you end up having a year. Honest to God, we pin stardom on guys who get 25 goals and 30 goals. You're like, that guy's a rock star. So I could see Slafkovsky scoring 30 goals in this league.
Yeah, that's why I'm lower, though, in terms, he's still got to prove it for me. I'll give him 30%, which is still, doesn't mean he won't be a good player, serviceable player, a guy that can help you when they start turning the corner. But bona fide star, a guy that's on the top 50 list for TSN before the season in the next few years, I think he's got a ways to go. All right, there you go. Jerry's After Dark in about an hour. All right? Jerry's After Dark. Jerry's Percentages brought to you by Boston Pizza, Canada's favorite sports bar. From tip-offs to tie bites and puck drops to pizza, BP's elite lineup of apps, wings, and ice-cold beers always dialed in for game time. Also in your local BP tonight.
Hayes, what was your percentage on Slafkovsky?
I had 30%. 30%.
Yeah, you said 30-something.
Yeah,
Come
30.
on, man.
What? 30%. Like the guy, he's playing better recently. And he's 19. He's a
pump
kid.
him up a little bit. I gave him 80%.
Why? This isn't a charity.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, listen, that'd be great
contest
if
winner.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not Jeff Gorton here, trying to sell tickets, or jerseys.
I think it's ignorant. You gave him 25%.
30%.
I give him 30%. Don't shortchange me. I'm giving Slafkovsky 30%. 30's not bad. That's 1 in 3. The guy turns into a star. All right? You got to be reasonable here. All right, Darren Dreger coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
But I remember Cotton Eye Joe. I've been married a long time ago. Where did you come from? Where did you go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. It sounds like an updated version of Cotton Eye Joe. Was it always that kind of beats, JP? JP's a younger guy, man. Was it techno? I guess so, yeah.
That's a techno version.
Okay. Yeah, it feels like a techno version. That's what I'm saying. I feel like the original one was more like country. kind of.
It was twangy.
Twangy.
Yes.
Twangy. That's right.
This is
John Denver would be played a lot too, right? Like Country Road. Oh man, would that be played in hockey rinks? West Virginia. Meanwhile, you're in Timmins.
Dude, when I got to Guelph, there was a place called the Loft. And I'm pretty sure in the Loft you could blow darts. It was one of those things, it was sunken right into the main concourse. You just walked right into it, and it was just, when those doors opened and people came out of there for the start of the second period,
yeah,
you could smell it on the ice.
You're right.
It was just, it was a poof of smoke.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it was the same thing up in Barrie where they had the restaurant where you could smoke inside the restaurant. Like, how does that make sense? Go grab some wings and a dart. That's what people want during the intermission.
love it.
Anyway. All right. Yeah, here we go with Habs fans. They're already all over me. How could you say that about Slafkovsky? What are you going to say, man? What are you going to do? He's been good. He's been better this year. Good for him.
That's what my buddy said, too.
I'm pulling
John
for him.
Germain, he's like, he better score 30 if he's going to be bona fide then. And I'm like, I think he will.
I hope so. I'm pulling for the guy. I'm
Kid's
pulling
19.
for him.
Let him be.
Let him grow.
Let's see what he looks like at
Let him
23,
grow.
24. You know?
There you go. All right, final hour coming up. Leafs in Arizona, we'll tee that up. Darren Dreger coming up as well. Spring training kicking off tomorrow. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.